Greetings, booktubers. Welcome back to Grammatics Books. Welcome to week 2 of Ambuary. Ambuary reading event. We're all during the month of January. We read books by Roger Zelazny with a special emphasis on the Chronicles of Amber, but you're not restricted to reading just the Chronicles of Amber. You can read anything by Roger Zelazny, which brings us to today's book, which is This Immortal by Roger Zelazny, published in 1966. And during this video, we're going to ask and answer the question, is this the Frank Herbert Dune killer? Is this book here from 1966 the equal of, and maybe even a superior novel to Frank Herbert's Dune? And we're going to answer that question. Here you guys saying, that's a preposterous question. It's absolutely ludicrous. Why would you even ask it? And the reason we're asking that question, the reason that it's relevant, is because as you can see from this little gold medallion on the front, and if you missed that one, there's an even bigger one on the back, this novel won the Hugo Award in 1966. It actually split the Hugo because it garnered an equal number of votes for the Hugo as Dune did in 1966. So Dune and This Immortal shared the Hugo in 1966, meaning an equal number of writers from the SFWA, the Science Fiction Writers of America, thought that this was the best novel, the best science fiction novel, and that in fact was superior to Dune. And we're going to put that theory to the test today, and I'll give you guys an answer to that question by the end of this video. So what about the book itself? It was published in 1966, but it's actually based on a short story by Roger Zelazny that was written in 1965 and was published in the Pulp magazine, the magazine of fantasy and science fiction, and it was split into two monthly issues of the magazine. So Zelazny takes it 1966, he combines those two magazines, and he adds additional material and then puts out the full novel form of it, or I call it a novella. It's 191 pages. Interestingly, not everything that was in the short stories that was in the magazine format in 1965 made it into the novel here for some bizarre reason. And the short story was titled Call Me Conrad, because the main character is Conrad Namakos, who's depicted here on the front of this cover. And that was changed by the editor to This Immortal. And I actually think that's a better title, This Immortal, than Call Me Conrad. Although Zelazny doesn't agree with me. He came out in favor of the eponymously titled book, Call Me Conrad. So this one's 191 pages. This is a 1974 fourth printing of the book. It's an Ace science fiction publication, and the artist on here is not credited here in the book. That always irritates me when the publishers don't credit the artists. I think that's kind of a jerk move. So I went out into the Internet Science Fiction Database, which has just a tremendous amount of information about science fiction authors and who painted the covers to all the various editions. And even the ISFDB listed this artist as unknown. So this is really an unknown artist. If anybody knows who this artist was, please put it down in the comment section below. I would love to know that. It's a decent painting. It's not bad. It's not the greatest in the world, but I've certainly seen worse paintings. But that's the book. That's the livery. That's the publication history of it. What is the book about? What is the plot of This Immortal? The plot is essentially a Dying Earth plot novel. It's very Jack Vance-esque in his Dying Earth series, although not identical to it. And the reason is it's set in the near future, several hundred years in the future on planet Earth. And Earth has been devastated by a nuclear war called the 3 Days. And Roger Zelazny, he just drops you into this book and you've got to play catch up. And he's making references to the 3 days. And he's making references to hot spots and hot zones across the Earth. And eventually you figure out that the 3 days was a 3-day nuclear exchange that virtually destroyed the Earth. Earth is nearly uninhabited, not quite, but nearly uninhabited. And the majority of the population of Earth has emigrated off of Earth and out into the universe. And when they went out into the universe, they encountered another race from Vega, from the star around Vega called the Vegans, that have had a civilization for thousands and thousands of years. And the humans and the Vegans developed sort of a symbiotic relationship, a benign relationship for the most part. And that is going to play a major factor here in the book, because the Vegans are far more advanced than humans, and the humans are in sort of a subservient role to the Vegans, although it's not an antagonistic role. And now the Vegans have started buying real estate upon the face of planet Earth, on this radioactive Earth that is almost deserted. And during this time frame, while they're buying this real estate, a very famous Vegan poet wants to come down to Earth, and he wants to go on a tour of these old historical sites on Earth, ancient Egypt, ancient Greece, North America, and a couple of other sites. And our hero, Conrad Namakos, is now inserted into the novel because he's living on Earth, and he is the commissioner of arts, monuments, and antiquities. And as the commissioner of arts, monuments, and antiquities, and as vegan poet wanting to visit all these old historical sites, he has been assigned as the tour guide for this vegan poet and his bodyguard, because touring Earth at this point in time is very hazardous. It's a very dangerous proposition because of all the radioactive mutation to the flora and the fauna. It's an extremely dangerous world to go out and walk around in. So he's been assigned to give him a tour as a tour guide and to protect him from the flora and fauna that he's likely to encounter, including mutated plants, mutated animals, and mutated humans that run rampant upon this dying Earth. Now, this poet from Vega is very famous. He's a famous poet, and he has attracted a large entourage of very important personages from Earth that want to accompany Conrad and this vegan poet upon this tour. And so you have these high-ranking people that have now joined the entourage and are included in this tour group that is being headed up by Conrad Namakos. That's where we're dropped in, and in typical Roger Zelazny fashion, you just have to play catch-up in order to put all this together as he gives you clues to it throughout the progression of the book here. And the reason that Conrad Namakos and this title of this book are called This Immortal is because you learn that Conrad Namakos is at a minimum a couple of hundred years old, and that he might be slightly mutated from radiation, which has given him the ability of this very long life that he's been able to enjoy, where he is at least 100 to 200 years old. But alternatively, Roger Zelazny also leaves open the possibility that he's not just 100 or 200 years old, but he could actually, in fact, be several thousand years old, and that he's not even a human being, not a true human being, but he is a figure out of mythological Greece, such as some very powerful creature out of Greek myth. And he leaves that possibility open throughout the book. Now, that is the basic setting for the plot. What provides the friction? Once Conrad starts this tour group with this alien, he is quickly informed by members of his entourage, very high up people within the Earth government, which now resides off planet, because nobody of any real importance wants to live on an irradiated Earth. He is informed that if the vegan is able to complete his tour of Earth, that it will be disastrous for the future of Earth, for the ability for the Earth to ever come back and become a vibrant Earth again, and he must be killed at all costs. And in fact, an assassin has been hired to do just that, and they want Conrad Namakos to step aside to not guard this poet and let the assassin carry out his mission in order to kill this poet. And in fact, one of the members of the group is a very tall, lean Arab named Hassan, who is the assassin. And that's not necessarily a spoiler. That's pretty much given up right in the front of the book. It's a minor spoiler, but it's not a major spoiler because it does come out quite early in the book. And I know what you're thinking, an Arab named Hassan who's an assassin, what a stereotype. But I'll get back to it because it actually works very well. So this is the main plot points of the book. You have two basic plots that are going forward. You have this tour group that is going around to all these very dangerous and all these archaeological areas of Earth in ancient Egypt and in ancient Greece. And they're encountering these flora and fauna and these mutated humans. And it keeps getting increasingly more dangerous for the tour group and Conrad Namakos, and difficult for him to protect this poet from Vega so that he can finish his mission and not cause a diplomatic incident that could lead to a deterioration of relations between the vegans and the humans. So you have that friction element, that adventure element of exploring this dying Earth. And at the same time, you have this internal friction within the group. You have these plots within plots. You have this assassination attempt by unknown assassins who are trying to kill the vegan poet while Conrad Namakos is trying to protect him, or figure out if he even should protect him, if it's actually better for him to let the vegan die rather than complete his tour of Earth. And the plot places Conrad Namakos, our hero, upon the horns of the bull. He has to pick the left horn of the bull, or he's got to pick the right horn of the bull. And that friction slowly increases as the book moves forward, with Hassan being the obvious pick of the person who wants to assassinate the poet. Now, I hear what you're saying. Why doesn't Hassan just kill the guy and have done with it? Because Konrad Namakos is the most deadly human being on the face of the planet, perhaps the most deadly human being in the universe. And Hassan knows that if he attempts to kill the poet without first getting Konrad Namakos out of the way or getting his consent and his cooperation in the assassination, that it will ultimately fail and he will be unsuccessful. And so you have this friction point going back and forth and this give and take with Konrad Namakos as he tries to decide whether he should cooperate with this radical political element that wants to see the poet die, or if he should carry out his mission as given to him by his boss and allow this poet to complete his tour. And he has to decide which one of these he's going to take. It's a moral dilemma that he's been placed upon the horns of this bull, and he has to pick one of these horns. And that is the intrigue that you have going on. You have unknown assassins who are trying to persuade Konrad Namakos to join their cause, but he's not sure if their cause is actually justifiable. And at the same time, he's trying to protect the poet and everybody else in this group from a very dangerous environment. And it makes for a great story here in This Immortal. So what about the writing? How is the writing in this book? The writing is solid. It's Roger Zelazny. He's not going to write a bad book. The writing is not on a par in terms of the descriptive imagery as it is with the Dream Master, and I just reviewed the Dream Master last week. There are passages here out of the Dream Master that are just absolutely poetry. I mean, they're just beautiful. It's beautiful descriptive imagery that supersedes just dialogue and writing and goes into the realm of pure poetry within a novel. Although the plot in this one doesn't hold together that well. You don't have that level of writing in here, but the writing is solid and the plot is much more cohesive than in the Dream Master. It is a very enjoyable book to read. There is a passage early on here in the novel where Konrad has to negotiate his way across a crowded ballroom floor, and it's going to be very difficult for him as a very well-known and a popular figure. And Roger Zelazny writes it beautifully in describing the ball and describing everything going on in the descriptive imagery and the social politics of how Konrad Namakos can get from one side of this ballroom to the other side of this ballroom without just being endlessly engaged by all of the participants in this ceremony that's going on. And it's wonderful. It sounds like it would be dull. It sounds like it would be boring. But Roger Zelazny is such an excellent writer that it becomes highly interesting and engaging. And it was one of my favorite parts of the book is just Konrad walking across a ballroom floor and the social engineering and the social politics that he's employing in order to get in an expedited manner from one side of the ballroom to the other side of the ballroom to talk to the person he needs to talk to. So the writing is wonderful. The characters are wonderful as well. Konrad is very well developed. And you've got Konrad, who is potentially the science fiction character out of like sort of a hard SF mode, or he could be a high fantasy character out of mythology. And it builds during the course of the novel, and you learn more and more about the backstory of Konrad, but you just get pieces of it. And Zelazny allows the reader in order to fill in the bits between what he's giving you, to fill in the blank pages between the chapters. And that gets us back to the character of Hassan. So Hassan the assassin, the Arab, the tall Arab, implacable assassin, he's not an immoral person in that he's only performing what he has been employed to do, what he's been paid to do. But if he's been paid to carry out an assassination, he's going to do everything in his power to do so. And he keeps trying, or I should say Konrad keeps trying to anger Hassan into provoking him, into challenging him to a duel. Hassan knows this, and he's unflappable. He won't let Konrad upset him at all. And as the book builds, you realize that Hassan actually has this moral fiber, this moral character, and that Hassan and Konrad have history together, and that he is not going to be deterred from his mission. And he becomes one of the most interesting and engaging characters in the book, and I really enjoyed that aspect of it. Another thing about the writing in this book, you better have a dictionary on hand, or you better have your iPhone plugged into Google, because on every page or every other page, there's going to be a word in here that's going to be antiquated, that's going to be historical, that you're not going to understand, and you're going to have to look up the meaning of that word, which I always take as a very excellent sign of a well-written book when those words are used properly. And the words are used perfectly, exactly. They're inserted exactly where they need to be, and they don't seem shoehorned in. But you're going to want to have a dictionary on hand in order to decipher all that language. So that gets us to the final point. Is this a good book? Is it a better book than Dune? We have the tie here. We've got the tie in votes from the SFWA for the Hugo Award on This Immortal and Dune. Which one is better? Is This Immortal a better book than Dune? Well, the answer to that question is very easy. Isn't it? No, it isn't. It's just not. Is it the equal of Dune? No, it isn't. It just is not. It's not the equal of Dune. This is the greatest selling science fiction novel of all time for a reason. It's the Frank Herbert, the world builder, with the original world creation of Arrakis, the face of Arrakis. This is a far better science fiction novel than this one. But that does not mean... Stay. That does not mean that this is a bad book. This is not a bad book by any stretch of the imagination. This is an excellent book. If you're a fan of Roger Zelazny, this is a can't miss. It's a very good read. I give it a solid 8.5 out of 10, whereas Dune is obviously, it's a 10 out of 10. This isn't a 10 out of 10, but it's a rock solid 8.5 out of 10. The book did have a couple of minor issues. You have these two plot points that are progressing simultaneously. You have this adventure story where the tour group is fighting with and interacting and trying to overcome all these obstacles here on this irradiated, dying Earth with these flora, the fauna, and then finally with these human mutants that are attacking the group. And at the same time, you have the internal dynamics of this assassination attempt and plots within the tour group itself. And these two plot points are moving to a crescendo, and they are converging as they get to the end of the book. And the plot point, the plot arc with the mutants, it ended on a little bit of a low note, I thought. There was a little bit of a deus ex machina in order to solve that one. But the other plot point, the overarching and the holistic plot point about the internal struggle, the internal politics, and this assassination attempt is resolved very well. It's very beautifully done. It's a great ending to the book. And that is the ending that you, in fact, is the finale to the book. And it ends on a very good note. This is a very good book. But that's it. That is This Immortal. If you've read This Immortal and have an opinion on it, put it down in the comment section below. I would love to hear it. And with that, I think I'm going to wrap this one up and say take care, be safe, and I will catch you guys next time.